Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. A few things before we dive in. In the background, while that was going on, I get to see people dancing, and Miss Gill, you rocked it. So thank you so much for that. That was amazing. So we're all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world, and I love this program because literally yesterday, we put in our newsletter that Ripley's Aquarium was doing a Seahorse program. We'd forgotten to put it in a little earlier, which is our mistake, and yet still 35 classes registered for this program for just 6 camera spots. So thank you so much for the last minute epic amount of support. We really appreciate you covering up our mistakes, and we're excited to get to it today with a really exciting talk. Again, back at Ripley's Aquarium of Canada. They've been one of our oldest partners. We've been doing programs with them for several years now. Every animal you can imagine, from their turtles to their giant sharks to all sorts of amazing creatures, all on our YouTube channel if you want to check them out. But today we're going to go to one of our smallest creatures in the aquarium. So Ripley's Aquarium, the largest indoor aquarium in North America, 16,000 animals, over 400 species. And we're going to learn today a little bit about seahorses. So Toki's joining us. He's an educator at the aquarium. We're going to dive in literally and figuratively. And when we're done talking about them, we're going to take all your questions. If you're on YouTube too, let me know where you're joining from. I'd love to get a sense of where all our classes are coming in from around the world today. Toki, take us away and go for it. I can't wait.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're all having a good day so far. Like Jesse said, my name is Toki. I am an educator here at Ripley's Aquarium of Canada. And today I'm excited to share with you all our seahorse exhibit. Before anything else, I'd like to share a few cool facts about seahorses, or at least facts that I think are very cool about seahorses. One is that a seahorse, their genus name is Hippocampus. In ancient Greek, that translates to horse and sea monster. I'm assuming the person who saw seahorses thought that they were unusual and gave them that name. And another fact is that as humans, we have a part in our brain that's actually also called hippocampus, which is named after seahorses because of the resemblance. You can Google that later on if you want to see a hippocampus, or the human part, the hippocampus. But anyway, seahorses are a part of the group of animals of bony fishes called cygnathids, along with their relatives like the pipefish and the sea dragons. And we actually have those in the area as well. I'll just move the camera real quick so that I can show it to you all. Excuse the movement. I'll try my best to keep it as stable as I can. So these are some pipefishes over here. You also see some pufferfish swimming around. The one in the screen right now is a pipefish. Yeah. One thing that cygnathids have in common is that if you look at their mouth, they have a fused jaw. So their mouth would look like long, narrow tubes, very similar to a straw or a snout. And I'll just move to the sea dragons. Oh, we have one in front, which is really cool. We have, let's see if I can change the camera view real quick. It's a bit low. Over here, yes, this is a VD sea dragon. We have a few in this tank. And if you look at their mouth, they also have the fused jaw, the snout-looking or straw-looking mouth. Now I'll just move back to the seahorse, and then we'll talk more about seahorses. Excuse the movement, I'm sorry. I'm using a tripod right now because this exhibit it's hard to talk about this exhibit when if I'm not using a tripod, basically. But here, seahorses, let's see if we can find a good spot. We've got those ones over there. Oh, here we go. You'll see some swimming around, and I'll try to focus on them. And later on, we'll get to see them eat. Before that, I'd like to share some more information about seahorses. I'll stick to this one over here because it's not moving and it's easier. There. I'll just adjust the view depending on where the seahorses move. There we go. Okay, anyway. Seahorses, another characteristic that cygnathids have is that they've got long, narrow, I mentioned the long, narrow body. You probably noticed with a seahorse and with the pipefish and with the sea dragons, they've got unusual shape, unusual compared to other fishes. And then they also don't have any scale. They actually just have a thin layer of skin outside of their skeleton, and their skeleton has a very unusual shape to it. It's made of bony plates and bony rings, which actually forms a structure that's very similar to exoskeleton. I have a skeleton of a seahorse over here, which I will focus on. Here we go. So these are just dried up seahorses, and that's their skeleton. Their skin just slightly shrunk onto their skeleton or stuck to their skeleton, but yeah, that's what they would look like when they dry up. Now, moving back to the live seahorses. Yeah, they're pretty active today, so it's really hard to find one good spot, but I'll move back a little so everyone can see them swimming around and staying still. Yeah. Now, seahorses in particular, to focus on their unique anatomy, if you look at the top of their head, at the base where their head meets their neck, you'll notice that they've got tiny beading pectoral fins or side fins. And they mainly use their pectoral fins for maneuvering or steering. The pectoral fins actually gives them a better movement, better control of their movement. They can swim upwards and downwards if they want to. And moving to their back, you'll see that they've got dorsal fins or back fins, which is a bit smaller compared to their body size. And you'll notice if it's beating that it's actually beating heavily. It's moving around a lot. And although it puts a lot of effort into helping the seahorse move, seahorses actually have a reputation of being poor swimmers. They're not the best swimmers, basically. One species of seahorse actually has the honor of having the crown as the slowest swimming fish in the ocean. It's I believe a dwarf seahorse is what they're called. And think of it this way: if a seahorse were to swim across a bathtub, it would take them about 1 hour to swim from one end to the other, lengthwise. So yeah, they're really slow swimmers. And then if you look to their tail, they actually don't have any tail fins or caudal fins. But they do have prehensile tail. What that means is that seahorses are able to grasp onto things using their tail. Imagine a chameleon, the reptile. Now, their tail, they can also use it for hitchhiking, basically. So seahorses can attach or grasp onto debris in the ocean, and they can move from one place of the ocean to another. So it's a way for them to move long distance. Now, let's see if we can get them to eat. Yeah. So I just asked my friend Vincent, the aquarist, to feed the seahorses. So we'll see it happen in a bit. Now, let's talk a little bit more about their tail before that. So seahorses and their tail actually gives them a really good stabilization. They can anchor themselves onto structures in their surrounding. So structures in their surrounding or in their habitat, such as corals in a coral reef, seagrass or seaweed on the seabed, kelp in the kelp forest, roots in a mangrove, basically anything that they can latch onto for stability and for stability. We can see the food right now. We're feeding them mysids right now, a small shrimp, basically a zooplankton. And let's just focus real quick on, let's put our attention to their feeding habits. So here you can see seahorses. Well, it's a bit difficult to see here because these are frozen mysids, so they're not moving a lot. But seahorses are actually ambush predators. What they like to do is to stay still, grasping onto a structure with their tail, and just surprise their potential prey. And one thing that I would also like to focus on while they're eating is that if you look at their mouth, what they do is they would swim close to their prey and they would just suck up the food like a straw, basically. And the cool thing about seahorses is that their body shape gives them good hydrodynamics, so they can move efficiently in water without their prey feeling their movements. And then another fact that I wanted to mention about seahorses is that they also don't have stomachs. They have some intestines, but no stomach at all. So their food passes through their body quickly. What that means is that they eat a lot and they eat often. They're always hungry, basically. And I've been told by our aquarist, aquatic biologist, that the babies are usually more enthusiastic to eat. You would see them, it looks like they're enjoying the food more. Now, one thing I did want to mention about seahorses, some of their predators or let's start with their prey. Some of their prey would include small crustaceans, small larval fish, basically anything that can fit through their mouth. That's the only thing that's limiting their eating habits. And then their predators would include bigger crustaceans bigger than themselves, so big crabs, big lobsters, even some bigger fish like tunas, groupers, if there are any, and even rays, stingrays. Now, going back to seahorses and their traits, their anatomy, aside from their prehensile tail, I'd like to highlight their other cool adaptations. For example, seahorses have. I mentioned earlier that seahorses don't have scale, but they do have a thin layer of skin around their skeleton. On their skin, they actually have specialized cells called chromatophores, which helps them camouflage or to blend into their surrounding. So again, think of a chameleon. And then their eyes, seahorses, their eyes can also move independently. So this allows them to see more of what's around them or what's in their surrounding. And it can also allow them to focus on multiple things at once. Once again, think of a chameleon. I do need to mention, or I want to address that the similarities between a chameleon and a seahorse, their traits, it's a really good example of convergent evolution, which basically describes the fact that some organisms, even though they aren't closely related, can develop similar traits independently. So, although a seahorse and a chameleon live in completely different environments, they both developed a prehensile tail, they both developed chromatophores, and they both have eyes that can move independently, which I find is really cool about the ocean, about nature, really. Now let me just focus on the seahorse over there because they're not moving and they'll stay in the screen. Okay, so seahorses are most known for their peculiar reproduction. Most people know that the male seahorse are the ones who would carry the fertilized eggs and will eventually give birth to the fries or baby seahorses, or in singular, a fry, one baby seahorse. But that's not the only quirky thing about their reproduction. Seahorses are known to perform courtship rituals. During their mating season, seahorses will pair up and every day they perform pre-dawn or early morning rituals. They do this they do this so that they can check if their partner is still alive, and also so that they can sync the reproductive state or the reproductive cycle. This behavior just increases the chances of seahorses successfully reproducing during their mating season. It helps life continue, basically. Now, once the pair of seahorses establish that both are ready, the female will deposit its egg cells into the male's brood pouch, and the brood pouch where the male keeps its sperm cells, and then fertilization follows. Gestation of the eggs or incubation of the eggs would take about 10 to 45 days. And then the male will give birth to 100 up to 1,000 fry or baby seahorse. And then after giving birth, the male will require a few hours to rest, about half a day to rest. Immediately after, though, the male will be ready to reproduce again. And then the cycle repeats. So in the mating season, seahorses can reproduce multiple times. Now, moving on to the conservation portion, the biggest threats to seahorses currently and in the past would be intentional harvesting and unintentional harvesting. So, intentional harvesting is mostly done for cultural purposes because it's believed that seahorses have medicinal benefits. This is always difficult to solve this issue because it's deeply rooted in a culture and then in a country. But there are organizations out there, for example, like the Seahorse Project, who tackles these issues by involving local communities and also by attempting to adjust policies. Now, another big threat to seahorses would be the unintentional harvesting, which occurs as bycatch, or basically uh, when multiple species are caught, even though only one species of fish was intended to be caught originally. So there are some accidental catches. Now, a way that we can directly help with this is to be conscious of how our a fish product that you want to buy was sourced or was taken from the ocean. And then also by supporting sustainably caught seafood. There's actually an organization called Oceanwise, which you can look them up on the internet. Oceanwise promotes sustainably caught seafood by spreading awareness and education. Oceanwise also supports sustainable fishing efforts, and they do a lot more. If you're curious, you can check them out. But yeah, basically, if you want to buy a fish product in a market, you can just look for their logo in any fish product that you want to buy. Let's focus on this one seahorse over here because it's not moving around a lot. There we go. Yeah. Now, another threat that can have a huge impact in the future would be habitat degradation and habitat loss, especially if we consider what climate change can do, how climate change can impact these animals' habitats. So, for example, climate change causes ocean warming and ocean acidification, and for a habitat like a coral reef, those issues they have huge, really horrible impacts. Basically, climate change, ocean acidification, ocean warming, they they have they they're very stressful to corals, and once a coral is stressed out, it can lead to coral bleaching. And basically, a bleached coral reef won't be able to sustain the animals that are relying on that habitat, animals like seahorses and other fish in the ocean. Now, some direct ways for us to help out is by being more conscious of our carbon footprint, decreasing our carbon footprint if we can, um, with ways like being conscious of how you use your energy and where energy is sourced in your locale, in your area. If your area uses energy from fossil fuel sources, just be more conscious. If your area is using energy from renewable sources, then that's awesome. And then also you can decrease your plastic usage. You can live a more sustainable lifestyle if you can. Um, One thing I do want to point out for these ways to help out is the main point is to not do too much too quickly, because if you do too much too quickly, you might end up overwhelming yourself. Just take small steps to change the small things in your daily life. That way, these small changes can be permanently added to your life. Um, but yeah, I'll end the talk over there. If we have any questions, you let me know.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Toki. And again, I brought up the sustainable seafood from Oceanwise on a banner on the screen. So if you want to check that out, it really is a remarkable organization and things. If you're looking for sustainable seafood choices to help seahorses and all manner of really cool species, I'd encourage you to check that out when you're done. We've got a whole bunch of live groups and a whole bunch of you on YouTube. So welcome in from Newfoundland, Virginia, Connecticut, across Ontario, and more. Really nice to have all your classes joining us again on such short notice. What I want to do now is kick us off by going to Miss Gill's class. Joining us us in Ahani Way Public School. If you want to kick us off with a question, just demute your microphone and come on up. And that's actually a note for all our teachers. You can all demute your mics. I can't hear you until I bring you in. So get ready and go for it. And let's take a question from Miss Gill's class. Oh, you're muted. You need to unmute your microphone, Miss Gill.
Hey,
There you go.
grade 1, do you have any questions? Okay.
We can come back too if you're waiting for questions.
Yes, yeah, I'm still waiting for the questions. Thank you.
Totally fine, no worries. Let's go to Chloe Jane. Chloe Jane, welcome in for the first time. If you have a question for us about seahorses, go for it.
How old do they live to be?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. So this an animal's age really depends on the individual and then the species, and also there's some factors about their size. But for seahorses specifically, their age can range from 1 year to 5 years old. It depends again on the species and then on the size and even on the individual. But yeah.
Fascinating, and not very, very old. Like, these are not fish that live to 20, 30 years. That's very cool. Thanks, Toki. All right, let's go to Miss Martellino's class. They're joining us remotely for the first time. Come on in, Miss Martellino, and go for it in Riverside.
Hello, I have a question from Karina. Why is the animal the sea dragon called the sea dragon?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. When sea dragons were first discovered, basically they resembled the mythical creatures, the dragons. There is some, I guess, dispute as to which started first. Maybe dragons were based off of sea dragons. But yeah, it's because of the resemblance they have to dragons.
Yeah, they're very, very cool animals. They're actually one of the most endangered species that is allowed to be in aquariums in the world. So they're very, very well regulated. Only a certain number of them are allowed to be taken into the wild every year. It's very, very small, and they all come from Australia. So they're a really, really neat creature. If you ever get the chance to go to Ripley's Aquarium to see their sea dragons, they're absolutely mind-blowing. I just love them. Great question, guys. All right, let's go back to Miss Gill's class. If you want to, again, demute your mic, I'll come and see if you have a question now or a question on behalf of your class.
Okay.
Go for it.
Yeah, Katai, you have a question? Okay.
What seahorse's its favorite food?
What? Could you repeat it, Miss Gill?
What is their favorite food? Seahorses. What do they eat?
Favorite food, Toki?
That's a really good question. I've been told by our aquarist, our aquatic biologist, that these seahorses love to eat brine shrimp, especially the live ones. Brine shrimp, they're zooplankton, basically, small crustaceans, almost microscopic. But yeah, they love zooplanktons, brine shrimp.
Yeah. Wicked. Thanks, Toki. All right, let's go to Miss Blackie's class. Welcome in, guys. Just demute your mic, and you're all good to go.
How deep can seahorses go?
That's a really good question. So seahorses are actually, they live in the shallow area where in parts of the ocean where light can still reach in meters or in feet, or let's stick to meters because I'm not sure about feet, but meters, it would be around 50 to 100 meters, basically. These are also the areas where you would find corals growing and where you would find kelp growing.
Yeah. Wicked. That is much deeper than I would have expected. Thanks, Toki. All right, Mr. Delorier's class. You guys already have your mic all good, so go for it. Hi.
Why do the male seahorses give birth instead of the females?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I'll try and answer this multiple ways. Short answer, right now, we still don't know. We still don't precisely know why that is. But there are some theories out there. One theory that I know of is apparently this is a good way to divide the energy cost of reproducing. Creating gametes or eggs to reproduce is actually takes a lot of energy, and also taking care of the eggs is a lot of energy. So the females will be creating the egg. That's one half of the energy consumption, and then the males will be taking care of the eggs. That's the other half of the energy consumption, and also males taking care of eggs is also a good way for seahorses to ensure that their babies can survive. It gives their babies an extra help.
Yeah. Thanks, Toki. All right, we're going to take a few questions from YouTube because you guys are just inundating me with questions, and I love it. And then we're going to go back to all our live classes in just a second. So, Miss Valent's class, they want to know, do the seahorses ever fight, Toki?
That's a really good question. They don't fight per se, but during mating season, the male seahorses have been observed to be aggressive towards each other in an attempt to fight for a female.
Yeah, I just posted on the YouTube chat a link to pygmy seahorses that are pink headbutting each other. Ferocious little buggers, so they're very, very cool. So I encourage you to check that out, guys. All right, let's see. Miss Hardy's group, they're joining us in Isle of Mort in Newfoundland. Welcome in Newfoundland. So exciting to have you guys. Ashlyn wants to know, how much do seahorses usually weigh?
That's a really good question. It depends on the species and the size, but usually it would be somewhere between 1 pound to 3 pounds.
Yeah. Wicked. All right. And then Miss Grange's class, and then we'll go back to the live ones. George wants to know what seahorses' predators are. What's eating all the seahorses?
That's a really good question. Some of the known predators of seahorses include really big crustaceans like lobsters and crabs, also big fish like tuna, grouper, and then even rays or stingrays. But also, one cool fact about seahorses is there aren't really a lot of predators for them, mainly because their skeletal system, the bony plates and bony rings, it actually gives them the effect of being unappetizing for predators. So, for example, imagine you as a predator and you're chomping on a seahorse. With their skeletal system, rather than us crushing them, they can just compress their body. And then we'll, as a predator, we'll probably think that they're not appetizing, they're not tasty. But yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to our live class. It's Miss Gill's class. If you guys have a second question for us, just come on back in.
Yes,
Take us
sure.
away.
Yes, Kyra.
Hi, Kyra.
When horses sleep?
When do they sleep, Toki?
That's a really good question. To be honest, I don't know the exact answer. If I were to guess, I would say they follow the same, or most of them would follow the same schedule as an animal. They would sleep during the day, or they would sleep during the night and be awake at day. But I have heard of species of seahorses that are nocturnal. So they would be more active during the night and they would be asleep during the day. And for them, it's easier because they could just latch onto their surrounding, to a coral, for example, and just pretend that they're not there.
So with some species being diurnal and some nocturnal, let's just say they sleep whenever they're tired. Great question, guys. All right, let's go back to Chloe Jane. Chloe Jane, come on back in. Go for it.
Do seahorses have teeth?
Yeah, big chompers for the seahorses, Toki?
That's a really good question. They don't have teeth. So what they do is they just swallow their food with their mouth. That's why for the things that they eat, it has to fit through their mouth.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Chloe Jane. All right. I'm going to take a couple quick questions from YouTube, and then we'll finish off with our live classes. Ooh, Miss Doyle's class has so many questions for us. Let's see. Some of these have already been asked. All right. Do seahorses threaten other seahorses? And thanks, Jaden, for the question in Miss Doyle's class.
Do seahorses threaten other seahorses? I'm assuming in regards to biting or
fighting or maybe eating each other, Toby?
Yeah, I'm assuming in regards to eating each other. Yeah, like Jesse mentioned, they do not with seahorses, or at least with one theory about fish and their spawning, is that usually you've got your fish that migrates to spawn or to lay their eggs, and those are the type of fish who won't be able to distinguish their babies from what they would want to eat. With seahorses, since they just give birth in the same area, I don't think that's an issue for them.
All right. Let's go to Miss Chiarello's class. What colors do they come in?
That's a really good question. With seahorses, their color, with having chromatophores on their skin, their color actually depends on their surrounding. It can change depending on what's around them for camouflaging. We've got in this tank, I'm not sure if you can see it, but on the bottom over there, the seahorses that I'm focusing, you'll see two males that have two different colors, although they're the same species. So it really depends on them and their chromatophores. Oh, I'm...
Oh, sorry, I know what I'm doing. All good. I'm telling everyone else doing. I'm forgetting my own. Miss Martellino, if you want to come back in Connecticut, joining us again, go for it. Just demute your mic. Take us home.
I've kind of two questions that are a little combined. Are they found in all the different oceans, and do scientists track them at all?
That's a really good question. Yes, seahorses are found in all over, basically every parts of the ocean, every part of the ocean, even in the Mediterranean Sea. Do scientists track them? That's a bit more difficult because with seahorses, they're actually very elusive creatures. It's a bit hard to find them. I would say scientists won't track them the same way they would track other animals by putting trackers on them. Um, but scientists do try their best to get their numbers. Um, but yeah, they're very elusive creatures. A friend of mine who works at the aquarium as well, a diver, told me that in all of her dives, and she has a lot of dives under her belt, she's only ever seen seahorses once.
Wow, very cool. Thanks, Ms. Bartolino, for the question. Let's go to Ms. Blackie's class, then I'm going to take one from YouTube and wrap up with our JG Workman group. So Ms. Blackie's group, go for it. Hi.
Have they ever mated in Ripley's before?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I love that. You actually reminded me to show you some juveniles and some babies. Let me just move the camera real quick. But yes, they can mate in Ripley's aquarium. These are actually juvenile seahorses. These are not babies, but I would say these are about 1 or 2 months or up to 3 months old. I can show you some babies if you're interested, but that would require me moving. Is that okay with you guys? If I move real quick?
Go for it, Toby. Let's go on a journey.
Let's go on a journey. I'll show you the back of the house.
While you're doing that, while you're taking us behind the scenes, I just want to note, it's a great question. A lot of people might know that it's really hard to get animals to breed in captivity in many cases. The seahorses are the exception to that. There are tons and tons and tons of baby seahorses, as Toki is showing us right now.
Yeah.
Holy!
That's a really good question, yeah. These are some of our babies. We're actually expecting more babies to arrive because some of our males are still carrying fertilized eggs.
So, Toki, what are all their names? Can you tell us each one's name, please?
Oh, this is Seahorsey. This is Seahorse number 2, Seahorse number 3. No, it's difficult to give them names.
Awesome, very cool. I'm gonna, you know what? You don't need to see me. Let's just stay on the babies because that is adorable. I'm gonna go to our coolest named student of the day, Mr. Spice's class online from Zeus. How many species of seahorse are there? Now, Toki, I know this is one of those questions that's tricky, so I did look this up. So for Zeus, there are 46 recognized species of seahorse in the world right now, as determined by the IUCN. So 46 different kinds of seahorse. How many do we have at the aquarium, Toki?
At the aquarium, we have 2 seahorses.
2 kinds of seahorse. Awesome.
Yes, we've got the potbellies and lined seahorses. These are potbellies, which you can see.
Nice. All right, I'm going to bring up JG Workman's class for one last question. Come on in, guys. If you have one for us, go for it.
Do they taste good?
I wouldn't know. I've never tried seahorses, but yeah.
Yes, I'm. We'll leave that one where it is. Good question. You should try it someday. Go to a place where they eat seahorse and let us know. Come back. We'll do a backup session. I'm going to take a really quick question from online while we do that. So you talked about their skeletal system, and Landon wants to know how many bones they have. Toki, do we know about their bones or skeletal system a little bit more?
That's a really good question. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer.
Right. Very hard. A lot of these superlatives are really, really cool questions, but it's hard to know all these off the cuff. So Toki, thank you so much for being such a good sport with answering all our great queries today. For all our classes, this has been really, really fun. And again, we've never seen all these babies. This is the first time we've ever, I think, been behind the scenes to see our seahorse babies. So you guys are very, very lucky today. And Toki, as you know what we do at the end of every broadcast, I'm going to bring in all our live classes. So Ms. Gill, Chloe Jane, Ms. Martolino, JG Workman, and Ms. Blackie, if you guys want to join me in saying a big thank you to Toki for joining us today, you are all in the broadcast. Come on in. Thank you so much for all your great questions.
Thank you, Wade.
You're welcome.